Today I'm joined by Natisha Brooks. She is a candidate for United States Congress in the 5th District of Tennessee. I think that's down around Marshall County and Lewisburg. Is that correct?
Yes, Wilson, Marshall, Williamson, Davidson, Lewis.
Okay. And it's I think that was a
Oh,
pretty,
and Murray. Oh, and Murray.
okay.
Murray
And,
County. Uh-huh.
and I think that was a pretty crowded field down there. What was there, 9 candidates?
It started out with 17.
Wow. So it was like a
Yes,
presidential primary for the Republican nomination.
it
Yeah,
really felt like it.
yeah.
Yes.
So I'm glad you joined me today, Natisha,
Thank you for having me.
and I want to give you a chance to first talk about a little bit. Tell us a little bit of your political background, if you can.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me today.
You're
And
welcome.
any of your listening audience, and congratulations on starting a podcast. We too also have a podcast, Natisha's Political Advice. It's about helping conservatives, teaching conservatives how to move minorities and young people to the conservative party. So Natisha's Political Advice on Spotify. So for those of people like you that are starting a podcast, congratulations, because the more voices that we have, the better off we will be.
Yes.
Not one voice can't do it. We need millions of voices. So congratulations, and we wish you blessings on your podcast. I got into politics by way of my mother. Uh, she and my father were both Democrats. My mother still is a Democrat. Um, been in politics all my life. Was on Governor Ann Richards, the late Governor Ann Richards, the only female governor of Texas campaign. Got to see that in action as a little girl, watching my mother work the campaign trail for her. Um, and then around 2010, after Obama, we worked on Obama's campaign too, in the field. Um, it was ex- exhilarating seeing the first African American president. I just never thought we would see anything like that in our lifetime. And then after his inaugural speech, things started to change for me. And then in 2010, I left the Democrat Party, or I say the Democrat Party left me, and I moved to the conservative side. And it's easier to say that when you have a small business. So I really did not understand business and what the party stood for until I started my own small business and started writing checks for taxes that I didn't want to pay.
Yeah.
So that's what moved me to the conservative side because I started researching the platforms. And then my two children, I own and operate a homeschool academy. We service uh, students that are autistic and those that have learning disabilities. And we have roughly about 300 families across the United States. And that's not talked about. We talk about education, but we don't talk about learning disabilities and the cost that families have to endure with learning disabilities. Some are on the verge of bankrupt all the time.
Right.
Uh, so my two children are really the ones that should get credit of me moving to the Republican side, the conservative side, because when I homeschooled them, they had a project on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And they came across and found a book called Where Do We Come From Here? Where Do We Go From Here? Excuse me, from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and discovered that he was a Republican.
Hmm.
Well, my two children got in trouble because I sent them a timeout. I said, there's no way, that's blasphemy. There's no way Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a Republican.
Right.
So after I did our thorough research, I was like, oh my God, he was. What is happening? And then as we started studying the Reconstruction era in Tennessee politics, the first African American Congressman Rainey of South Carolina was the first U.S. Black Republican congressman to the United States. And did you know he was also Speaker of the House?
Cool.
So there's a lot of history in American politics, African American politics, that we don't talk about, that we discovered through homeschooling. So I credit them of making me, the Bible says, out of the mouths of babes. I credit them for making me do my research, and we did our research together and discovered what the Republican Party was about. And then we took a test. So there is an online test that you can take to see if you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. And we took the test together, and I told them, I said, I told you I was a Democrat. Flipped it over, and they said, no, you're a Republican.
Yeah,
So that was really interesting.
that's called the Nolan survey.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's the Nolan survey. If people take it, they'll find out that they lean pretty much. Most people lean more conservative to libertarian. Yeah,
That's right.
and
That's right.
so it's a good uh, it's a good test to do and see uh, where you actually lean. So
Yeah.
um, tell me about your experience in politics. What's your political background?
Well, I'm used to being the campaign manager. So my side trade is running campaigns. And
Okay.
I've run very successful campaigns. Um, I started with in my hometown of Gilmer, Texas, and then when we moved to Tennessee and moved to Florida, I ran some campaigns, commissioners, councilmen, state representatives, uh, state senators race. Um, and then when 2016 came, Senator Lamar Alexander retired. Upon his retirement was a crowded field of about 17 people. Two got removed from the ballot. And right before the closing of the deadline, a couple of days before the deadline to submit your petition and application, we discovered that there was no woman on the uh, ballot. And so our homeschool families were like, I'm sorry, not 2016, 2020, 2020. Our homeschool families were like, are you kidding me? We cannot let history say that no woman in Tennessee, and we already have a stigma in the South. So
Mm-hmm.
we didn't want that stigma of, okay, it's only all white males that are running for U.S. Senate in Tennessee. So we went and collected our petition, got our signatures, had our kickoff campaign, and we did all 95 counties for U.S. Senate. Haggerty won, but history can be said that when you pull the record, a woman was on the ballot. And I know a lot of people say, well, you don't have a chance in heck. You don't have a chance in heck. That's not the point. The point is that history can say a woman ran. And it's interesting enough, not only did a woman run, but a woman of color ran. So our mission is not just to keep putting ourselves in elections. Our mission is we have a problem in the Tennessee Republican Party and the National Republican Party, and that is it looks like it's one color. It looks like it's only one color that's running. So we purposely put ourselves in national and federal races so it can be said, see, there are people of color that are conservatives.
Right.
So we started with the 2020 U.S. Senate race. We got 8,100 votes, and we went all 95 counties. It was one of the greatest experiences in our lives. And then on the congressional race, when the U.S. Senate race was over, we saw that Jim Cooper was running uncontested and nobody ran against him in 2020. So we turned right back around and did a write-in campaign. I had to go from Davidson County, Dixon County, Cheatham County, and turn in my papers for a write-in campaign. And then we got 13 votes. But the reason why we got 13 votes is because you have to say your name, you have to spell it correctly,
Right.
not one letter off, or they throw the ballot out. But we were told we got thousands of votes, but they only put Brooks or Tish or Natasha or whatever.
Yeah.
But if it's not spelled correctly, they throw it out.
Right. Exactly.
So then we turned around and said Jim Cooper would not run again. And we were the first in the 2022 campaign for the old fifth. And then they redid the line. When they redid the line, then everybody jumped in because it went from a plus 16 Biden to 16 Trump. And then they redid the line. Then everybody jumped in because it went from a plus 16 Biden to 16 Trump. And then they redid the line. Then everybody jumped in because it went from a plus 16 Biden to 16 Trump. And then they redid the line. Then everybody jumped in to like a plus 12 um, uh, Trump category. And so we were like, what is happening? So we went from three people in the race that was in the old fifth. Ironically enough, all of us were minorities. All of us were minorities.
Cool.
I, and then when the new fifth came, two of the minorities got picked off. I was the only one left standing on the new ballot. And then we had almost 17 people, and then it narrowed it down to nine. And then again, we were the only woman of color on the ballot. And people said she doesn't have a snowball's chance in heck of winning. But that wasn't the point. The point was we're trying to make a face and make it not appear that the Republican Party only looks like this.
Right.
And so that's it. And we will continue to run in elections to ensure that, and we're getting other minorities to get into the race. Or if you don't want to get into the race, start your own podcast, get out there and be a face. Um, but a lot of people they're in fear of doing that, of minorities, because I've talked to minorities that have lost 80% of their businesses. They don't want people to know where they stand because they're shunned.
Right.
So, but we're going to continue our mission.
Yeah. And you know, one thing I think people uh, or misinformed about is when it comes to elections that it's not always about winning. It's about using
Yeah,
your platform, using that
yeah,
platform to get a message out there. You know, to you think uh, 4, 8 years, 12 years down the road. I mean, look at Ronald Reagan when he got involved in 1964, and then
yeah.
then 76 he ran against you know um, Gerald Ford, and
Mm-hmm.
you know just about beat him. And then in 1980 he becomes president. So it's not always
Yeah,
about winning that first election, that second election. It's about using
yeah,
that platform to change voters' minds, getting out, even if you're not going to be the candidate, getting out, getting that experience as running a campaign and
yeah,
helping other people down the road. You got to get that experience in doing it.
yeah.
So this time, with all these seats, I mean, we just went through a primary election here in Tennessee. So why United States Congress instead of the state legislature?
That's a great question. Many people have asked me that. You have to go where your calling is. Our calling, and I pray to uh, God about this, the Lord about this. It's just not state politics.
Right.
Um, our platform is more national based, and so those of your people that are listening to your podcast, your constituents that are listening, when you run for a seat, never let anybody. Now, this is I've got my campaign manager hat on now, so I'm shifting hats. Never let someone tell you you look like a school board candidate, or you know what, you went too high, or you went too low. You should have done this, or you should have done this. You need to look at what your platform is. And for me, being a homeschool educator, our platform has to do with education. We want the national education out of our business. The
Amen.
state the states do not seem like they can handle doing the job. So we need to take it to the national level. And if we rid the national level of education over the state, then it'll make the state's job easier on deciding on how do we go about having parents have the right to educate their children, a right to a choice to educate your children.
Yes.
So our platform is national. So education one. Number two, veterans. What we want to do for veterans is not on a state level. What we want to do for our veterans is on a national level. Um, Veterans are not allowed to um, um, veterans are not allowed to have education past a bachelor's degree. I don't know if you know that. They their GI Bill, the way it's formulated, doesn't let you have a degree past bachelors. So our veterans that have served in our country should have a right to free education if they want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a PA, um, an accountant, a CPA. They've served our country honorably. They should be able to have their education past bachelor's degree honorably. And that is something that cannot be done on a state level. The other thing that cannot be done on a state's level is our veterans have not had an increase in their pay, retirement pay, in forever.
Yeah.
That's not something that a state level can do. So that's two. And then the last thing that needs to be on a national level that states that we feel that have failed in Tennessee too, we must talk mental health. We are in a mental health crisis past the pandemic, and that is not a Republican thing or a Democrat thing. That is a humanitarian. That is a national effort. So those are a few. I wanted to be on the business community, business committee, and small entrepreneurship because there are so many people that are starting businesses and they don't want to go to college. College is not for everybody. So there is an entrepreneurship committee in Congress, and I wanted to be on that committee to help young people that did not want to, that don't want to go to Congress, to to start their way into their small businesses or taking over their own family businesses.
Yeah.
So
Um,
our platform is national, not
yeah.
state.
So I just want to clarify on the veterans education. Are are you saying that like the GI Bill, it won't pay for anything other than anything above a bachelor's degree?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. And
Okay.
we did some research. I've met with veterans. I've met with veterans all across the fifth and the state. I want to make sure that was clear. And I've talked to a veterans representative. And so, yes, that's not something a state can do. That's a national level issue.
Yeah. Okay. Another question I have is now I'm sure you got out and knocked on doors and spoke
Mhm.
to a lot of groups and stuff. Well, what kind of feedback did you get when you were knocking on doors from folks or going to groups? What do you see was their main concerns at the door or speaking to groups?
And specifically in Wilson County, Wilson County is the home of the Century Farmers, and I'm a farmer, by the way. Um, Farmers are not heard, and especially in this new $570 billion deal that was just signed into law, it definitely hurts Black farmers. So farmers' issues are not considered. Okay, and so a lot of farmers are selling their property, selling their land. I mean, just to keep up with the needs and the demands of keeping their farm going. And then another part of the national discussion, EPA, I don't call it Equal Protection Agency, Equal Problems Agency. Farmers and miners, we are so overregulated, it's ridiculous.
Right.
There's over 770,000 pages of regulations. I'm just on page 6. Well, now I'm on page 9. It's a lot. And so you don't know what you're violating until you get the ticket, told to pay the ticket, and we'll discuss it later. That's not the way it should be.
Right.
So for those young farmers and those, so that's one thing I heard at the door. The second thing we heard at the door as knocking, we knocked 50,000 doors, and it seems sad that we only got 1,700 votes. We'll talk about that in a second. But um, we knocked 50,000 plus doors. We mailed out 50,000 plus letters. And the main thing that we heard was, Miss Brooks, jails, my son is in jail. He has mental illness. He is bipolar. What can we do to help students, to help seniors, to help farmers that have mental illness, depression, suffering with depression? That was the number one issue we heard at the door. The second issue that we heard knocking at the door was, Ms. Brooks, where do you stand on the Department of Education? Uh, Frankly, I think it should be abolished.
Right.
The Department of Education came around about what, 1977, 1979. What has it done for us? Absolutely nothing.
Education's
And
went
so
downhill since then.
it's gone downhill. And look at the results of Tennessee. we don't even have a 70% passage rate. We're at a 30, 40% passage rate, and that's terrible. So I don't see where it's done us any good. And all of the certifications and the master's degrees and the PhDs, we have these teachers with all these degrees, but yet our students are still failing. So I think what we need are people like you and me. Uh, I'm looking at some people here on the patio. If you have a passion in welding and you know how to weld and teach welding, if you have a passion in math and you have a track record, I love what Governor DeSantis is doing down in Florida. Come one, come all. We have a shortage of teachers. We have a shortage of teachers, not with the degrees, a shortage of teachers that have a passion for
Mhm.
their trade of what they want to teach.
I think a lot of it is it doesn't matter how well a teacher is, how good a teacher is when you're dictated to teach to a standard, and that's what
Yes,
you're judged on. It doesn't matter how many how you how many skills you have, and what you can do for the students. What you're going to be judged on is what they give you to do, and that's it. And that's what's killing our education system,
yes.
in my
And
opinion.
also, and also, I said at a debate, I don't want to know about Adam, Eve, and Steve. I just need you to teach my children A, B, C's, and one, two, three.
Right.
That's it.
Absolutely.
That's all. That's all. So, my personal belief is um, that they're focusing too much on the social issues in public education and not the ABCs, one, two, threes, and the standards that need to be taught, and not teaching the test. If you teach the standards, the kids will pass the test.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So interacting with the voters when you were out, um, what are some of the things that you learned from voters when talking with them?
One thing I learned from voters is that they don't know how to vote. They don't know what they're voting for.
That's
When
sad.
we were not, and it's really sad, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Many doors we're not. We're in a new district. Oh no, I'm in District 6. No, that's your county
Hmm.
seat. So they don't know what they're voting for. Another thing that I learned from voters, and they just flat out told me, we are so voter fatigued. You got elections in March. You got a special election in May. You got another one in August. Then you got another one in November. And now, oh, well, no, there's a special election in October because somebody resigned. It's too much. It's just absolutely too much. I like how some of the states do it. I believe it's Alaska that does it. Just throw everybody on the ballot. Democrats and Republicans, top two voters get this, and then you until you come to a 51%. When you have voter fatigue, and I believe it's a loss of money, one thing I'm going to go to the Tennessee Assembly about is we got to cut out all these elections. Two max, maybe a year. Figure it out because I don't even know why we need an election commission. I hate to take away jobs, but when you only have 5 or 7% voter turnout, that's a waste of money to me, a waste of paper, and a waste of time. So I'm not quite sure why we need 15 days of early voting if we're only going to have 5% or 7% turnout. So that's the second thing that I learned from knocking on doors. The third thing that I would say is probably most dear to me on knocking on doors. Is this a national issue? Is it a state issue? Or is it a local issue? I cannot tell you how many people are one check away from being homeless. They
Hmm.
cannot afford their mortgage. They cannot afford their car. They cannot, I mean, they are, I've knocked on so many doors, and I'm sure you've seen this. They open the door and I don't see any furniture. I mean, 10,000 square foot homes, 5,000 square foot homes, they're house poor. They got into the mortgage. They didn't know that, oh, we were going into $4 or $5 a gallon, right? They didn't know all of this was hitting. So it's dear to my heart because my father recently passed away and he left us off very well. And I'm going to tell you, if he didn't leave us with property, if he didn't leave us with what we had, I probably would be one of these people like that. Even though I have a very successful homeschool business, we have probably 72% of our parents that can't pay tuition on time. and we're being very patient with them.
Right.
So we are in a I want to say I don't want to say mortgage crisis, but as they say, the rent is too high.
Right.
So that's one of the things people are trying to figure out. How do they make it from this step to the next step as
And
far as their finances?
that's one of the things that I noticed here in probably in your counties where you're at as well. The last 2 years, they had provided um, free lunches for students, and then
Hmm.
even when school was out during summer, or while the schools were shut down during the COVID shutdowns, they were
Right,
opening up the school cafeterias and sending
right,
meals, because if those kids didn't come to school, they would go hungry. So,
right,
and yet on a local level and state levels, we're raising taxes on people, on those same
right,
very families that you're telling me that they can't feed their kids lunch, if
right,
they will go hungry if they don't go to school. And
right.
the sad part of that from in my county is the county government here in Hamilton County is 100% Republican control, you know.
Wow.
So, but we just went and spent $100 million for a new jail justice system, the justice
Mm,
center, you know. So, and they say, well, we're not going to raise taxes for that. But the next project that comes up, they're going to have to raise taxes for
that's exactly
it.
right.
And in the city council here, they spent it's probably going to be close to $40 million by the time it's all said and done to build a community center. And property
Hmm.
taxes went up 25 cents on 100. And
Hmm.
so, and then boom, Biden gets elected or put in office,
Right,
installed, however you want to say it. And
right,
now the cost of living, the inflation has went out the roof. And now
right.
people it's like, okay, uh, it's hard to make it now. So that's my
Yeah.
spiel
And
on
how do yeah, and how do you tell people we're gonna go up on your taxes now?
that. Right, exactly. So, so my next question is, then what's next for you? What do you feel like after this election? I know you want to take a break and just chill, but most people do. Putting words in your mouth, but so what's next for you? What do you think you're going to do next?
Well, I will, since this is my first podcast interview after the election, we have other people that want to interview us too. I will say it is something very big. We are, we're not quitting is not in my name. Um, we're not going to sit back and just watch. The fifth congressional district can still go blue. Senator Campbell is the Democrat nominee. And I remember something in a news article, and I kept this news article. House Speaker Sexton said the fifth congressional district leans red. However, you must select the correct candidate to win that primary for it to stay red. And I said, what would make him say something like that? Well, after the loss of the primary, I actually stood up and I was looking at the numbers. I was like, my goodness, we really needed to get this seat. Wilson County, Marshall County, Murray County, Lewis County, Williamson County. Republicans are going to have to turn out to vote. If they don't, Senator Campbell can win it just on Davidson. She really can, because one thing we know about Democrat voters is that when they're upset, they come out in droves
Mm-hmm.
and they come out early. Republicans, we tend to preach, oh, there's no way Trump is going to lose the second term. There's no way this person's going to lose. Look at our U.S. Senate race. Mitch McConnell pretty much has declared defeat for the U.S. Senate. And
Yes.
he has said that we should have put the right senator candidates up. I said this in Pennsylvania. if, and speaking of Sean Hannity, I wrote him a letter and I told him to stand down on Barnett. They were beating the black lady up that was in that U.S. Senate primary. Had she won, that might have been a different atmosphere up there because we know how many minorities are in Pennsylvania, right?
Hmm.
That might have been different. Now you got Dr. Oz and all his problems of not really being a Pennsylvanian. And then you've got Georgia, you got Wisconsin, you got Ohio. So we probably will, the way Mitch McConnell was talking today, it may be 46 Republicans. I mean, he has pretty much declared defeat. And then I heard some more talk about the congressional side. And they were saying, well, no, 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 not so fast. We may not take back the House. Well, this is the problem when you don't select, and this is the voters, and I'm talking to your voters. You might decide to run again. So to answer to your question, I'm not a politician to say just linger it out there and say, oh, well, we'll see no, Natisha doesn't know if it's going to be the fifth congressional. She doesn't know if it's going to be the U.S. Senate. She doesn't know if it. Well, she does know. I apologize for misinforming you. We do have a plan. We will be running again because we will not have in the South the stigma that there are no minorities in the Republican Party. We don't care if we get 3 votes. We will always put our name somewhere, and we work diligent. And now that people know us, it's so funny after the fact. They know us. They're like, Natisha, you must run again. You must run again. Now, where we run, we'll announce that in a
Right.
year. But we do know. But it's so important that your voters too that are listening, because one thing I tell people about when you start a podcast, never pay attention to the views. As this is I'm putting the campaign manager hat on again. Never get defeated and say, oh, we only had 2 viewers or we only had 10 viewers. If you had 10 viewers, you probably had 10,000 because just because they don't click it doesn't mean they didn't listen to it. It doesn't mean that when they clicked it, doesn't mean they didn't have a room full of 50 people listening. So we know people are listening.
Yeah.
Um, but it's very important that voters, you must do your research on candidates. You can't go in there and click, oh, this one had the big commercials or this one had the big signs. And then when your nominee loses, we're all sitting back, what happened? You didn't put up, this is what Mitch McConnell, go back and listen to what he said yesterday. Go back and listen to what he said this morning. You must put the right candidate up in the primary to go against the candidate on the opposite side. So uh, when he said that this morning, I looked at my team and my team said, that's a sign. I said, yes, it's a sign of things to come. Republicans and the National Republican Party, the Tennessee Republican Party, I firmly give them an F because you do not play chess. You have to play chess. Democrats do a fantastic job on it. They start training their kids at 16 and 17 on running for offices. We don't do that. You cannot have somebody that's 80, 75 years old running for an office. You got to start, not to say that we don't respect our seniors. We must pass the torch back to the younger generation. You must start patch, and I have no problems against Herschel Walker. But when you have a bag of goodies, as they say, that we can't answer questions, I have a bag of goodies. You have a bag of goodies, but I'm able to answer those bag of goodies. And you have to do like a Barack Obama. Remember, Barack Obama went ahead and wrote a book about his bag of goodies. And he said, here it is. Yeah, I did drugs. Yeah, I smoked dope. What are you going to say? There's nothing you
Hmm.
can say. He wrote the book first. You
Right.
can't let people find out later for the opponent to say, aha, we got you there. But had I won the 5th congressional district, it would have been tough for Campbell to come out against me and throw stones at me because guess what? The 5th congressional district, especially in Davidson County, is made up of 52% minority. So then you're going to have a lot of people upset, just like where you're running. When you run for an office, and I say this to the voters again, there have been many a time that I've had friends come to me and say, Natisha, will you vote for me? I've known you for 20 years. And I've had to be a politician and say, yes, but cross my fingers behind my back because I knew they weren't they were my best friends, but I knew they weren't the best for the job.
Right.
So one thing we have to do is we have to teach the voters to research your candidate. So anybody that's getting into public office, you need to put this on your card. Research your candidate.
Yeah.
Research your candidate.
Let me throw something out to you about the Mitch McConnell deal. Okay.
Yeah.
The Republican Party, the elites in the Republican Party are, they would be willing to sacrifice the 2022 midterms and put it all on Trump because Trump's endorsed candidates lost the general election and you do not need him as your nominee in 24.
That's exactly right.
Don't put that, don't think that they won't do that. So Mitch McConnell, that's what he's angling for. I guarantee you to say, look, you had all these Trump endorsed candidates that won their primaries, but they couldn't win a general election. So
Right.
Don't forget that.
Also, too, what's happening with all the FBI raid, and I'll go on record and say it. The FBI raid, all this that's happening to Trump, stop blaming the Democrats for it. My firm belief is that there is serious inside fighting in the Republican Party to
Yes.
make Trump look bad
Yes.
so that they can say, see, you don't want to vote for this person.
Right.
However, on the Trump side, if Trump Jr. is listening, the worst thing you can do is keep adding fuel to the fire. You cannot say this is the party of Trump. The more you do that, the more you have certain people in the Republican Party throwing a rock and hiding their hand and then making it look like, see, Trump over here is the bad guy. Sometimes, as the book of Proverbs says, be still, be quiet,
Mm-hmm.
just let things happen. They're just a little bit, in my opinion, too talkative. Instead of saying Trump will be the nominee in 2024, and by the way, I've said this, there must be a minority on that ticket. It cannot, and I will go on for the record. If you haven't seen 2000 Mules, you will be watching 4000 Mules. We need Trump and Tim Scott on that ticket, or we need Trump and a woman on the ticket. You cannot keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. It won't work. 47% of the national electorate are minorities. So people say, Natisha, are you saying that the Democrats are going to steal the election again? Or what are you saying? I'm saying if you don't put a minority on that ticket, if you do not put a woman on that ticket, you won't have 2,000 mules as the next movie. You'll have 4,000 mules.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we need to start being strategic. This is against Trump. Okay. So we need to make sure that our party, our conservative movement, looks inclusive. And that's why I purposely, and I'm very proud of people like you. Um, I'm getting ready to do I think 6 other podcasts. People are upset of what happened in the fifth because look what happened. We lost the RNC. The RNC didn't come. You have to play chess
Right.
instead of having you. I asked them, don't divide Davidson County up 3 ways. You divided it up 3 ways. Davidson County is 52% minority, and now you've got the liberals and the Democrat Party saying we got 3 white men that represent us. You couldn't even elect Beth. You couldn't even elect Natisha. We've got 3 white men, but now it's going to be local level fighting the state level. And I'm glad, and I'm understanding that Governor Bill Lee said that he would not retaliate against Davidson County. You weren't going to, because they weren't, whether you retaliated or not, they weren't going to do what you said. Uh, they were not going to do what you want them to do anyway. They're angry. They're upset. So we as conservatives have got to do a better job. And I'm proud of people like you that recognize that, hey, stick our face out there. Um, uh, Senator uh, Cody, Mark Pody has a black grandson. Talk about that. I told another gentleman, I said, I need y'all to talk to Senator Pody. He has this blended conservative family. Put that out there. We have to play chess with this because the liberals are going to make it out that we are the rich, racist, nationalist white party, and that's just not who we are.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, and the way you
Mhm.
started out the interview, talking about how the Democratic Party uh, left you, um,
Yes.
I have a I have twin sons, and one of them last night asked me. He said, and he studies history. He absolutely loves history, and
Love it.
Dad, he said, how come the Southern conservative Democrat has turned Republican? And I stopped for a minute and I thought, and I said, let me ask you this. I said, how come the Republican conservative Northern group has turned liberal? And
Oh,
he said, I don't know. I said, well, I said, think about it like this. I said, what is the South known for? What do they call the South? The Bible Belt.
that's right.
And when the Democratic Party slowly kept moving away from morals and God, then people
Mhm.
finally just said, I can't go along with it no
Yep.
more. I'm
Come
I'm
on, come
I'm,
out.
I'm voting Republican. And I think
That's
that's what
right.
you've seen in the Southern Bible Belt is
That's right.
they've went Republican because the Democrats have went so far to the
So
left.
far.
And you know, I'm gonna,
Now remember, we grew up, hand over your heart, pledge of allegiance. Men, take off your hat.
mhm,
The prayer. Um, where our property is in East Texas, we're Independence School District. So we still sing the Pledge of Allegiance. We still have prayer at the football games. It's a beautiful feeling. But when you're here in the suburbs and they just start the game, it just doesn't feel like how we grew up.
right.
You grew up with the principles saying the pledge, I mean saying the prayer, bow your head. And now we've gone so far, oh, we can't say Christmas, Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
It's okay for other religions to have their prayer time and we can't have our prayer time. So it's not the country we grew up
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're running a little bit over.
in. All right.
Well, we're under 45 minutes, so that's a good thing.
Okay, fantastic.
So anyway, but I do thank you for joining me today. And
Yes, thank
when
you for
I
having me.
when I end this, stay online. I forgot to tell you that we'll have a
Okay.
discussion after that. But I do
Okay.
appreciate you joining me today. And for those that I didn't
Yes.
get this in, um, you can follow me on Facebook at Charles Cook, and you can follow me on YouTube at Charles Cook 52 and Rumble at Charles Cook 52 on there as well. So anyway, uh, Natisha, I appreciate you joining me and whatever you
Thank
do
you.
and what's coming up next. I wish you success in it and everything. And
Thank
you sound
you.
like a wonderful person, and I wish you luck.
You too. You
And
sound wonderful too.
so thank you for joining us, and
Thank you
we
for having
appreciate
me.
it. So the rest of you, thank you, and please share the video and have a good day. Bye bye.